Long haul truckers, what's the creepiest / most paranormal thing you've seen on the road at night? I'm a truck driver in the UK, was driving through rural Scotland one night going down a country lane. All of a sudden I start to see flashing lights come through the trees, lights of all colors flashing through the trees and causing some really freaky looking shadows on the road. I'm not a believer of aliens or anything, but my first thought was UFOs. Safe to say I put my foot down and got out of there. Found out the next day it was rave happening in a field, but at the time it didn't half scare me. What time of year was it? When the haggis first start tumbling off the hill, we have various dancing light rituals. The lights scare them into running the wrong way round the hill and causes them to roll down into the hands of kids waiting to catch their first one. I drove by a marsh every night when I was going home from work. One night I saw a car pulled over with hazards on. Dude was head to toe covered in blood, no crash, no injury, just covered in blood. Not a trucker, but I remember seeing a TV show or something where this trucker said in the 80s or 90s, I can't remember, he pulled off an arrest stop in a southern state at like 3 AM. He said truckers stick together like a family, especially if one needs help with their gear/truck. They help each other out whenever they can. Anyways, he said he's getting ready to sleep and some guy starts knocking on his truck door. So he rolls the window down and this guy says he's a trucker that is having some engine problems and was able to park his truck way down at the other end of the lot. This guy at his door then asks if he can come help have a look at his truck. The trucker on the show said he thought it was odd because truckers usually just call their 24/7 roadside mechanic service that will try to fix your truck wherever you are, and if they can't, a new semi will pick up your load and your truck will be towed to the nearest diesel repair shop. He said that was the first red flag. He told the guy at his door, sure, I have to get some things and I'll meet you over there. So just start walking back basically to get the guy to get lost. The guy at his door says okay thanks and disappears down the lot. The trucker on the show said he then realized he was the only truck in the entire lot and that this guy wasn't a trucker, so he turned on his rig and hauled ass out of there. He then notified other truckers in the area to avoid that stop and gave a description of the guy. I don't think the guy was ever caught, but his intentions were obviously bad, and apparently this was a common thing at the time. Basically psychos making shit up at ops to take advantage of unknowing truckers just trying to have a rest. My dad has several stories from hauling logs in Idaho and driving trucks through Utah and Nevada. My favorite is from actually just in his pickup going through Utah. He said there was a light keeping pace with him out in the desert on a moonless night. It kept pace for a minute before it disappeared and his truck turned off. He stopped and turned it on and pulled off at the next diner. The folks in the diner called it a common occurrence. The creepiest is when he was hauling logs in Idaho and was coming down from near Coeur d'Alene area during a snowy winter night. He was putting on chains before heading down steep grade and said all of the hair stood up on his body. It felt like there was something watching him. Halfway down the switchbacks he saw a large figure standing on a 20-foot tall embankment. As he got closer it jumped down and the shoulders were as tall as the cab. In a single bound it leaped down and then leaped over to the other side of the embankment. At the time he thought it was a Sasquatch. Now he says it was probably a demon trying to make him crash. He didn't stop to remove the chains until he was well away from the mountain. A friend of my cousin was a long-haul trucker. He was making a delivery across the country and was in a hardly used dirt stretch of a rural route. Since the road wasn't exactly peachy he had to drive slowly. He sees another truck slowly approaching from the opposite direction, and he sees the truck is the same as his. Since this isn't fairly uncommon, he didn't think much of it, but as the other one grew closer, he decided to honk in recognition of having the same kind of truck. The other one replies and all is good. That is, until they narrowly and very slowly had to pass one another. He turned to look at the driver and he saw himself. Not a reflection. Not a similar person, but his exact same copy. Same clothes. Same hat. Same red beard. Staring at him. They passed each other and that was that. He told me he'd seen very weird things, but that was the moment he decided to stop being a trucker. I saw a guy with a red turban with nothing but only an American flag thong dancing menacingly, humping the air with his junk flailing back and forth. not a trucker, but news that happened in my city a few years ago. A woman who had been depressed saw a semi parked on an off-ramp and decided to lay underneath one of his tires and wait for him to drive off. I can't remember how long she laid there dead until someone found her, but the thought that the truck driver might never know that he aided in someone's suicide. What a horrible thought. Not a long haul trucker, but thought this would fit here. Also on mobile, so sorry for format. My mom, sister and I were on our way to a baseball game of mine during my junior year of high school. This was in northern New York so spring got a little chilly at times. The main road we took stretched about 35 miles and was nothing but cornfields and tree lines. We hit a stretch of the road that was super foggy for no reason, so my mom slowed down to a proper speed. We finally reached the end of the fog and we all looked to the left to see where we were. About 50 yards from the road was a man and woman in what appeared to be wedding clothing from at least 100 years ago. Man wearing a big top hat and a woman wearing a very old looking white dress, holding hands with their backs to us, walking towards the wood line. We drove past and I just remember the silence in the car until my mom said, "What the fuck was that?" Till this day, whenever we are together and one of us tells the story, we all get goosebumps. I was coming back home from a trip from Michigan and I saw these people wearing cult-like robes, one in town, one on a highway, and one in a park, all staring at me. Did you approach the dog park? You're not supposed to do that. Creepiest, driving I-30 through Texas and Arkansas. I would see what looked like animals / faces popping out of the bushes, but longer than a glance proved nothing there. They had just paved the highway, and there was hardly any traffic. I was dead tired. It was super dark. Highway hypnosis, I suppose. Paranormal. When I went to local driving, my route ran near an air reserve base in Indiana, so you'd see planes and helicopters pretty often. One night, about 2 AM, I was headed to pick up another load when I saw a bright green light in the corner of my windshield. It was too low to be an aircraft. It moved pretty slowly, then darted and I lost sight of it behind some trees I drove by. Typical, I saw a UFO shit, but I still think it was just a helicopter or a jet that I saw at the perfect angle that turned after a takeoff. The jet pilots have broken the sound barrier over town a couple times in the past sonic boom, so a jet flying abnormally isn't necessarily out of the realm of possibility. Just batshit crazy. Driving south on I-75 in the winter in Ohio, I witnessed a compact car like a Cobalt or similar get on the on-ramp to merge into I-75 north and lost control. They went sideways, fell at least 6 feet off the ramp and onto the shoulder of the interstate, landing on all 4 wheels, spun 360 degrees, and then proceeded to merge into traffic like it was fucking nothing. Blew my fucking mind. The CB radio was going fucking nuts for about 5 minutes. Holy shit, who else just fucking saw that? Etc. Myself and 2 friends had to drive from Laredo, Texas to Baton Rouge, Louisiana one night in my Ford van. It was about 2 AM. There is a particularly long and dark section of highway just outside Laredo. No buildings, towns, or lights for about 50 miles. I was in the right lane coming up on a truck and pulled out into the left passing lane as I was slowly overtaking this long truck. My peripheral vision caught a sudden movement of this big truck towards the right shoulder. I saw the truck was swerving to avoid hitting a person dressed in all white face, whose arms were folded across the chest and eyes were closed as they walked across the highway. I swerved to the left and barely missed this ghostly looking person with my passenger mirror. Can still remember seeing that the eyes were closed. That's how close we came to hitting this person. One time I saw a turn signal on a BMW. Bullshit. I was listening to a radio station when this trucker called in. He said he saw a lot lizard get out of one truck, douche with a bottle of grape soda, and get into the next truck. Edit. Clarification. A lot lizard is a prostitute that works in a truck stop or rest stop. I was 23. My newly married husband and I decided driving team would be a fun adventure after college rather than jumping into the 9 to 5. I was down in Arizona on a long stretch of nothing about 4 AM when a guy pulled up next to me waving his CB. I never left mine on. Listening to those guys BS was irritating. I turned on my CB and he told me I had a blown tire. I thanked him, figuring I would stop at the next truck stop. He kept harassing me to pull over and check my tire for a good 40 miles. I finally got to a next town and pilot truck stop, got out and checked my truck. No blown tires anywhere. No clue what that guy wolf done to me, but so glad I trusted my gut and didn't stop. Not paranormal, but I have plenty of stories as a young woman on the road. My stepdad is a truck driver and I asked him this question and he gave me 3 answers. In Winston-Salem, a guy was masturbating while driving by his truck and my stepdad threw his water bottle at him. Another time he said he was up near Oregon and he was the only one on the freeway at the time since it was around 2 a.m. and something large and pale swooped down a few yards in front of his truck and swooped back up into the tree line. While driving at 70 miles per hour, a tire rolled ahead of him and went across the median, nearly hitting another car. Saw a clown staggering down an alley in the city, back facing us, while we were coming to a stoplight at like 1 a.m. Looked like he was still blowing balloons or masturbating. Not seeing his face made it more ominous. I'm not sure if it's either really creepy or sad. Maybe he was on his way to abduct children. Or maybe he was blind drunk after a long day. Wow, balloons is a lucky guy. I was driving in upstate New York in early spring during deer season, and not only were there deer everywhere you had to look out for, there was deer pieces strewn everywhere from cars hitting them, then more cars hitting the roadkill and so on. Literal deer chunks all over the roads. Gross. A few years ago, some animal rights activists managed to release thousands of mink from a farm next to a large road. At night, the road was more blood than tarmac 4 miles. Remains everywhere, and don't even get me started on the smell.